Welcome to the What Really Happened radio show. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today here. It is Thursday, February 4th, 2016. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We have a lot of stuff to get through today. It's a very busy news day. A lot of crazy stuff going on here. Phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. 877-300-7645. Tom is sitting in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble and ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Turning over to Syria, the Syrian army is closing in on Aleppo. In fact, it's pretty much completely encircled. They're backed up and supported, of course, by Russian aviation. And, of course, Aleppo is the last stronghold. If the U.S.-sponsored terrorists lose Aleppo, this party is over. And basically they're doing an encirclement, and in fact some Syrian troops are now north of Aleppo, cutting off the supply routes at the Turkish border that have been sending in arms and supplies for the U.S.-backed terrorist groups, and of course cutting off the escape of all these people who are trying to get into Turkey because Syria is pretty much lost. And now you know why Turkey has been shelling the Syrian troops inside Syria. And Russia has provided videotape evidence of it, as opposed to Turkey and the U.S., which are saying, oh, Russia violated Turkish airspace, but we can't show you the evidence. It's classified. Maybe we can find it on Hillary's server if we really care to see it here. Russia, of course, is using Syria to debut their advanced Sukhoi 35S fighter. It's a very sexy-looking bird, and this is its first time in combat, and apparently it's doing very well, certainly better than either the F-22 or the F-35. Now, John Kerry is running all over that part of the world, and he is trying to sell this idea that this is all somehow Russia's fault, that Russia's continued airstrikes are causing the problem. We would have peace if Russia would stop bombing Syria. Not a word, of course, about the U.S. airstrikes and the coalition airstrikes into Syria, which keep missing ISIS and Al-Qaeda and are blowing up Syrian infrastructure. And let's be very honest here. Every time the U.S. has gone in and done a regime change, life for the people of that country has gone downhill. And so who can blame Syria for wanting to not let the U.S. come on in and change their government? If Mexico were sending terrorists into the United States of America to try and overthrow our government, wouldn't we fight back to keep control of our country? Of course we would. Now, Kerry is out there saying that Russians must stop the airstrikes in Syria. Because, after all, you know, the Russians are killing the U.S.-backed terrorists, and we can't have that before Assad is gone. We all know what the game here is. And Kerry is not getting a sympathetic audience. When he was down in Italy with a press conference with Italian Foreign Minister Paolo Gentiloni, a woman stood up in the audience and said, it's you who created Daesh. Everybody knows ISIS, ISIL, Daesh, whatever they're calling themselves this week. It's a U.S. creation. And everybody knows it. But Kerry has to go online because that's what he's being paid to do. Now, there's a very interesting story coming out of Associated Press. The world is pledging $10 billion for the Syrians. $10 billion to build schools and shelter and jobs for those poor Syrian people. Not in Syria itself. This is money that's being poured into Europe to deal with the refugee crisis, and not a mention of the U.S. attempts to overthrow Assad, which made all these people refugees in the first place. I'll tell you who needs that $10 billion is Syria, because that's roughly the cost of the economic damage to Syria that has been caused by all the U.S. bombing. All right, we're going to grab ourselves a phone call. We've got Matthew in Maryland. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Sorry if I'm a little off topic, but I just wanted to make a comment about the listeners who keep calling in trying to argue for their candidate, like, you know, Ted Cruz or Michael Rivero or whatever. It burns my pants that they're willing to sacrifice the Constitution to...
Yeah, but that's what they're being paid to do. It's called grassroots lobbying. It's a big industry. And we actually had an article that we posted at WhatReallyHappened.com, Confessions of an Online Troll, where somebody who was desperate for work went to work for one of these companies that prowl the Internet and plant false information. And finally he had enough of it, couldn't live with himself, and he quit, and he wrote this expose. But we know that the candidates, corporations, governments spend huge amounts of money, much of it from your taxes, to hire people to go online and call up radio shows and lie to you. And it's, under the current lobbying laws, it's actually considered legal to do.
Well, I know that, that happened, and I can only hope that that's who is calling your program. Unfortunately, I've talked to people that are just so bent on their particular candidate getting in the White House, they don't really care what the legality of it is.
Yeah, that's a big problem, because modern political campaigns are run as personality cults. Like Jim Jones and the Kool-Aid thing, instead of careful reflection of what the policies are going to be. Of course, in an age where we know that everything a political candidate says to get elected is gone on Inauguration Day, voting for the best dressed is probably the only option we've really got left here. And yes, there are some people, and certainly a lot of Hillary supporters, they're out there to get a woman in the White House. They don't care what Hillary is, what she's done. It's just they've got this goal. We want a woman in the White House to prove that we're just as good as all those icky-poo men. And that kind of decision-making about the future of the country is very, very reckless. Because again, they're trying to make a fashion statement rather than actually consider what is best for the nation as a whole. And of course, politicians love such people. Stalin called them useful idiots, because they were out there fanatically. But even Stalin recognized these people are stupid. They don't have a clue what's going on. But they're useful because they're out there saying, I want this, I want that.
I'd like to put forth my own candidate for the presidency.
Okay, and who would that be?
A really nice, exquisite copy of the Constitution, and just put it on wheels and just push it around everywhere the president needs to be, because that's all that really needs to happen.
Well, you're assuming that they would actually read it. And, of course, no, they don't. Remember what Bush said? It's just a blankety-blank piece of paper. That's the attitude in Washington, D.C. The Constitution is antiquated. It's outdated. We can't do business with that Constitution. We've got to whittle it away and throw it into the Al-Qaeda.
Well, I'm with you as far as, if the government's not following the rules, then I'm not obligated to do what they tell me to do. That's pretty much how I feel about it.
I think every American needs to come to that same zero-tolerance policy. If the government is not keeping their side of the contract, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, they're not a legal, legitimate government. I'm not going to do what you tell me. I'm not going to pay your bills, and I'm not going to sacrifice the lives of our children in these wars of conquest that you're mounting all over the globe.
Agreed, sir. Thank you much.
All right. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go here. All righty. Over in Russia, they're expressing deep concern over this continuing NATO buildup for war in Europe. Now, NATO and the West are saying we have to counter Russian aggression, even though there hasn't actually been any Russian aggression. They keep going back to this big lie about Crimea, how Russia stole Crimea from Ukraine, which is not what happened. Following the U.S.-backed coup d'etat in 2014, the people of Crimea voted to secede from Ukraine. They have a right to do so under the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which says all people have a right to self-determination. If the government that's way up there in the corner isn't taking care of you, you have a right to break free and start over again, which Crimea did. Then, after they declared their independence from Ukraine, they asked to join the Russian Federation. Putin said yes. That's what actually happened. But the propaganda, the big lie, is out there. Russia stole Crimea. They annexed Crimea. They stole it away from us. Those were our slaves. How dare they do that? We'll be right back. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show here. The Ukrainian army has been shelling Komenternovo in Donbass using 120-millimeter mortars. That's heavy artillery. It's a violation of Minsk. It's a violation of the ceasefire. Over at the Donetsk People's Republic, they have been under attack with 82-millimeter shells over the past 24 hours. So, Now, here's a very interesting article. It's coming out of RIMP.com, Seeking More Cold War with Cuba. And they're talking about this editorial that appeared in the Washington Post, talking about the failure in Cuba, with a subtitle saying, Mr. Obama's opening is not leading to positive change. Really, things were much better off when we were embargoing Cuba. Now, what's going on here, if you look at history, you will see that the war hawks, and especially the people at the top of the Central Intelligence Agency, they love to carry a grudge. They still have not forgiven the people of Cuba for kicking out the U.S. puppet ruler Batista and replacing him with Castro. Because, by golly, you just don't do that to the United States. Once you are conquered, you stay conquered. That's the rules there. We'll never forgive you. And we are talking about events that occurred a half a century ago, in the last century. And there's still a lot of people running around the permanent government, the agencies of the United States that are out there saying, we've got to show Cuba that we're going to go on being tough. And, what an image it presents to the world. The mighty nuclear-armed United States whooping on this little tiny island in the Caribbean. Now, a little bit of history you may not be familiar with. When Castro first came to power, after Batista and his cronies bugged out to South Florida, Castro approached the United States about normalizing relations. He said, we can all be friends. The only thing is, you're going to have to pay the fair market value for our agricultural produce, mostly bananas and sugar. Well, companies in the U.S. Didn't like that. They'd been getting this sweetheart deal from Batista where they got bananas and sugar at way below market prices, which magnified their profits. And they weren't going to go back to paying the fair market price. What are those farmers going to do with all that money? Buy food and clothes for their kids? I mean, how does that help us? And that's when they did the embargo. And it was because of the embargo that Castro was forced to develop a relationship with the Soviet Union. It wasn't his first choice. And, of course, that put a Soviet satellite state 90 miles away from the United States. It was a dumb mistake to do, and it looks like somebody's going to get ready to do it again. Because I think the reason Obama has opened up relations with Cuba is to make sure that when we go to war with Russia, Cuba is more or less in the American sphere of influence. And if the old guard war hawks start up a new Cold War with Cuba and bring back the embargo, what's going to happen? They're going to align with the Russian republics, and we're going to have another repeat of the Cuban Missile Crisis. These people are not thinking clearly. Have they been importing their drinking water from Flint, Michigan? You kind of have to wonder. Maybe I should send one of these water-safe testing kits over to Capitol Hill and make sure that their water is safe. All right, we're going to grab ourselves a phone call from Ramon in California. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
Yes.
I was just letting you know about colloidal silver. I make my own colloidal silver. It's an advertisement, but, no biological creation in the laboratory or in society has ever been able to compete with colloidal silver.
Well, you're preaching to the choir here because, I make my own as well. We have a very nice setup and always working to improve the quality of what we're doing. We only make it for our own personal consumption. We do not sell it to anybody because I don't want the FDA. It's more trouble to where I'd rather give it away for free than, sell it and have to deal with more government paperwork. But I'm absolutely convinced it's a wonderful antibacterial, antiviral. We even found a report from the Air Force laboratories that they had discovered that nanosilver was actually effective against hemorrhagic fevers, including Ebola. And one of those African nations that had been dealing with the Ebola outbreak from that lab, what appears to be a lab accident at Kenema, they were using colloidal silver and they were getting very good results. But of course, you're not supposed to know that. You are supposed to go down to the doctor, get a note, and go to the pharmacy and buy something there. They don't want you able to make your own medications and do your own treatment. We can't make money off of you if you're not sick enough to go to the doctors.
And I wanted to say, Mike, that it covers all angles, no matter if it's Ebola, the Zika virus, AIDS.
Okay, it doesn't. Okay, Ramon, let's be careful here. It doesn't cover every situation. It is a broad spectrum, antibiotic, and it is broader than the commercially available products. But it's not a wonder drug, one size fits all. Anyway, listen, I need to get back to the war zones here, Ramon, but I'm in agreement with you. Colloidal silver is wonderful stuff, and you should all learn how to make it for yourself. There's instructions at my website. I'll post them on the next commercial break. All right, getting on back to the war zones. Very bizarre story coming out of Investment Watch blog. John McCain is encouraged that we're heading into war with China. It's a good thing. It's going to distract all you slaves from the mishandling of the economy and the poor quality tap water and the crumbling roads and, Common Core education and the rest of it. We'll get a bloody war going and the Americans will just forget all about the crime and corruption and vote rigging and they'll salute the flag and fling their babies onto the designated enemy's bayonets. McCain is still living in the last century here. And frankly, if McCain thinks war with China is a good thing, let's all take up a collection, send him a rifle, a parachute, and a bright day-glow orange jumpsuit, and fling him on to Beijing. Let him have all the fun that he wants. Now, over in Great Britain, Nigel Farage is out there. He started this cross-party movement opposing Britain's fully joining the European Union. And he's out there saying it's people power that is going to win the referendum. The polls are overwhelmingly showing that the British people do not want to merge with the European Union. They have seen what the immigration crisis is doing. They have seen how the European Central Bank has destroyed the economies of all the European nations. They want nothing to do with it. So what does David Cameron do? He goes into Parliament and he tells the members of Parliament, ignore the people. Forget what the people want. This, merging with the European Union, it's good for corporations, it's good for us, we're all getting financial support to push this thing. Just ignore the people. They don't matter anymore. These issues are too important to leave up to the British people. And I'm rather gratified to see that this provoked a huge amount of anger in the Parliament. Because Britain is not supposed to be a dictatorship, and David Cameron isn't the monarchy. He's the prime minister of what is supposed to be a democratic government of some sort or other. But that's how desperate they are to bring about the New World Order, where Cameron's out there telling members of Parliament, pay no attention to what the people want. They don't count anymore. It's what the money junkies want that rules the world. So, alrighty, we're going to be looking at the economy here a little bit. The DAX plunged to a one-year low. Deutsche Bank is in serious trouble. The Italian bank stocks are sliding. It's really starting to come apart. More when we come back from these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're talking about the economy. And obviously, a big factor in the economic turmoil that we're seeing all over the globe was this misguided attempt to weaponize oil prices to use against Russia, which is an oil exporting nation. And Russia's economy did suffer a hit, but their economy is also based on other areas of endeavor, including manufacturing and agriculture. And so the damage was survivable. Unfortunately, the blowback from this hit a lot of countries where oil production is a major part of what they're doing. And so the ancillary damage was tremendous. Oil companies going out of business, companies that supply oil companies going out of business, fracking can't pencil out anymore. A lot of those companies are in major trouble. Now, what's interesting is there's an article over here in RINF.com where Steve Levine is saying the problem is that speculators misunderstood the oil wars and the market meltdown. And he's basically saying the investors in the fracking industry thought that high-priced U.S. shale oil would cause a boom, which, no, it really didn't work out. But he's not really getting back to the initiating event of the oil price war. So how are we going to deal with this mess? Well, according to a story that's just coming out at Economic Policy Journal, President Obama is going to propose a $10 a barrel tax on oil. Huzzah, huzzah. That will drive prices back up again. Won't that be great? Actually, no. It's just another cash grab by a desperately broke, out-of-control government. And I'll tell you why. Raising oil prices by putting a tax on the oil doesn't help the banks that made loans to oil companies, because that tax goes to the government. And the oil companies are still left with the lower priced revenue, the lower revenue from their oil sales, and they can't service their debt. I'm sure it sounded good in the White House meeting. Oh, we'll put a $10 a barrel tax. That'll drive the oil prices up. It certainly will for the consumer level, but it's not going to solve the problem of all these loans to these oil companies hovering at the edge of default. All right. U.S. factory orders slide for the 14th consecutive month. Inventory ratio soars to recession cycle highs. The whole system is beginning to lock up. We're still hearing on the news, oh, there's an economic recovery, and all the candidates are campaigning, we'll keep the recovery going strong. What recovery? 1 out of every 7 Americans is still relying on food stamps to eat. It's just insane. Job cuts surged 218% in January. And yes, a large part of that is the layoff of all the Christmas shopping temp workers who were hired in December and basically stood around with absolutely nothing to do because it was a dismal holiday shopping season. But it does amount to a 6-month high. But trust us, the unemployment is only 5.6%. Really honest. We're the government. We wouldn't lie to you about that one. Sports Authority, another iconic American company, is preparing to file for bankruptcy and close 200 stores and lay off all their workers and default on their loans. That's what the bankruptcy is really all about. Because athletics and sports, that's a luxury good. And people don't have the money to indulge their athletic dreams anymore. Plus, if you will remember, Obamacare imposed a tax on many of these items. Now, over in Philadelphia, there's an article, Pension Funds' woeful return on investment will leave taxpayers hurting. And they're basically talking about that Philadelphia's pension fund, like pension funds across America, is in serious, serious trouble. They're having to pay the pensions out. New money isn't coming in enough volume to cover it. And it's going to be bad news. Why are these pensions in trouble? Well, this all goes back to 2008 and the mortgage-backed security fraud, where Wall Street's pet ratings agencies gave these mortgage bundles AAA ratings, which made it legal for pension funds to invest in them. Pension funds, because you're dealing with people at the end of their life and they don't have the time or the means to start all over and rebuild their lives. Pension funds are strictly limited in what they can invest in. Has to be very safe, solid investments, AAA. And Wall Street's pet ratings agencies were rating all of these mortgage bundles AAA, which they didn't deserve. So the pension funds bought into them. The mortgage-backed security fraud imploded. And all these pensions lost huge amounts of money into the pockets of the Wall Street money junkies. But nobody wants to say that. They're out there blaming the workers. Oh, it's those workers. They're living too long, really. There should be a contract that after you retire, you get to live on your pension for a year, and then we're going to come on over and shoot you. Because you're just in the way. You're not supporting the economy anymore when you're retired. You retirees, you're just a drain on everything. And you need to remember, a pension fund or any kind of a retirement fund, including Social Security, is a promise that you were made. In exchange for your money today, we will take care of you in your old age. And then you get to your old age and the money isn't there. And they're out there saying, well, it's your fault. You lived too long. They're facing the same problem with Social Security. Social Security is one of the largest holders of U.S. government debt, and the government can't pay that debt. And the Social Security Trust Fund bought that debt with the money of the American people placed in trust with them. In a very real way, the U.S. government is already in default on its debts. But they strategically chose to default against you, the American worker, because you can't do anything about it. Can't sue them, can't repossess, can't change their credit rating. It's a sweet deal for the government here. The CEO of Shell Corporation has confirmed that in the merger with BG Group, there will be 10,000 layoffs. 10,000 layoffs involved on that. Now, there's another little interesting article that came out from investmentresearchdynamics.com, and it was inspired by a video that Mike Maloney put up called "Is a Financial Crisis Being Covered Up?" because they're looking at some strange maneuvering behind the scenes involving a sudden plunge in the Federal Reserve's total capital account by 65%. And they're asking the question, if something happened last November that had to be covered up, because there was that Fed's unscheduled, expedited, closed-door meeting that took place on November 23rd. There may have been a major whoopsie back then that was held off by pouring money at it. And then we're seeing this other article over here from Investment Watch blog. Wells Fargo insider says bank is preparing for emergency scenario. And this is apparently a report coming from a staffer at a Wells Fargo branch saying it's just been announced they're going to be having drills and preparations for an emergency situation in which there will be armed guards at the bank and only 3 customers will be allowed in at any one time. In other words, they're getting ready for a run on the bank. That's what they're getting ready for. They're not going to make it to November without a major upset in the economy. They're just not going to get there. Hyperinflation has come to Venezuela. They're ordering new banknotes by the plane load. They're going to be in Zimbabwe territory very, very soon. Eventually, so will the United States. Over in Greece, they're having a general strike over their austerity, and they're having tear gas used against them, because how dare you stand up and want to keep your own money? That's not the way private central banking sees the world. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I just got an email from a listener responding to the story about 1 in 7 Americans is still dependent on food stamps. And apparently this listener's food stamp allocation just got cut from $149 a month to $30 a month. Now, here in Hawaii, Claire and I are involved in a couple of food programs. One of them works through one of the local schools to basically come up with food bags for the last week of every month, because here in Hawaii, food prices are high, and they're skyrocketing right now. And the food stamp money only lasts 3 weeks. And so these kids are going to school hungry. They can't think, they can't learn, so we're trying to basically work with this group to just put together these little food bags to hand out. It's all that we can do. But, of course, if you're an illegal immigrant or a refugee, you're getting all kinds of hands out from the federal government, courtesy of those very generous and kind and caring U.S. taxpayers. It does seem like the government's priorities are just a little bit out there. Turning on back to the economic news, Spain's external debt has now climbed to 1.8 trillion with a T euros. That is gigantic. But again, it's inevitable, because all private central banks are designed to produce more debt than money with which to pay that debt. To use that unpayable debt as a form of enslavement of the nation and its people. That's what it's designed to do. It's a form of dictatorship and slavery. And it's no more legitimate a form of governance than rule by divine right or rule by slavery. And like those former failed systems, it only works as long as you are brainwashed to believe that this is the way the world is supposed to be. And it isn't. Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and Ben Franklin and all the rest of the founding fathers showed us all a better way. And later, U.S. Congresses betrayed the American people and sold us back into the same banker slavery we fought the revolution to be free of. Now, you remember Dominique Strauss-Kahn used to be head of the IMF. Then there was a rather convenient sex scandal that cost him his job and put Christine Lagarde in there. He has now joined one of the banks in Ukraine, Credit Dnipro, and goes into immediate effect. And this is actually covering another issue that's going on in Ukraine that isn't being talked about. Remember when Poroshenko was first installed by the U.S. coup d'etat, and he basically loaded up the government in Kiev with a whole bunch of foreigners and just enrage the Ukrainian people. They had Saakashvili up there. All those foreigners, they're starting to very quietly resign their jobs and head on out of town because they can see the writing on the wall. Ukraine's first Deputy Minister of Economic Development and Trade, Yulia Koyalev, said she's going to resign, and she's doing it because her boss, Agaras Abramovikius, and two of his deputies are stepping down. The leader of the Radical Party of Ukraine, Ola Lyashko, is out there saying, why does Putin get the blame when the Kiev government steals and lies to the people? So I think the rats are deserting the sinking ship over there. Now, over in France, there's a new film that just came out about the Maidan. And Ukraine was demanding the French government shut this down because it shows the coup d'etat in Kiev in 2014 far more accurately than the story that we got through the corporate media, and certainly from Kiev's point of view. But it is out there, and it's getting good reviews, good exposure. If you can speak French, it's already available online to watch for free. And Kiev is out there screaming that Washington, D.C. has knocked Ukraine to its knees by not interceding with France to shut this movie down. Well, we all know that France stands for freedom of speech, as long as it's not about Israel. So France was kind of caught by their own propaganda on this one. Speaking of propaganda, over on BBC, they've come out with a docudrama, I guess you could call it. It's a blatant piece of propaganda. It's called World War III Inside the War Room, and of course the corporate media is saying, this is amazing, you must watch it, it's gripping, it's dynamic. And basically the film is just a sales pitch to sell the World War III to the masses, to convince them that they're going to have to sacrifice even more so they can build up more weapons to wag at the Russians, trying to bring back the Cold War. And we know it's a piece of propaganda because it starts out again with this claim that Russia seized Crimea and they're coming to do it to you. And that is not what happened. Crimea seceded from Ukraine by election, had its second election say, yes, we want to be part of the Russian republics, and that's what happened. But the big lie is out there. Russia stole Crimea. Not too surprisingly, Russian ambassador to Latvia, Alexander Veshnyakov, almost butchered that, is saying that this piece of propaganda by the BBC is a dangerous piece of propaganda. It's trying to provoke a war fever among the British people. Yeah, it is. Another fine product from the BBC, the news network that reported the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7 26 minutes before it actually happened. BBC also stands for buggering British children after that whole Jimmy Savile scandal. These are not good people over there. Even if you are a huge fan of Top Gear, which I am. And by the way, apparently the new Top Gear has run into such trouble with its first presenter. They've actually got Matt LeBlanc to come on and be a co-presenter, which could work. He's very good. So we'll tune in and take a peek and see what happens. By the way, completely off on a tangent, speaking of taking a peek, I finally got to see an episode of the new X-Files last night. What a piece of junk. It doesn't recapture the feeling of the original one. It was a nonsensical story, thin writing, sloppy filmmaking. I don't know why they bothered. I do not know why they bothered. Alrighty, let's see. Getting on back to this World War III Inside the War Room. This film actually says that Russia is going to attack Great Britain, and the British government is going to say, we can't fight back. So basically, a lot of people are coming on out and saying, this is just all about selling the British people on the need to pay higher taxes and buy more weapons. The military-industrial complex on parade. And the signs of war are everywhere. There's a story over at truthout.org, and it's talking about these parents who are longtime peace activists, and their daughter is in kindergarten, and she came home with a worksheet, homework assignment, that asked the children to pick which branch of the military they would like to be in. Now, why are they feeding that to children unless they're planning on sending the children into combat? They're already going to send women into combat. Look at the history of Nazi Germany. When they started sending their children into combat, it was a sign the war was just about over. All righty, we're coming up here on the top of the hour. We're going to get into the campaign and the candidates. Ted Cruz is out there dissing Donald Trump, saying, oh, he's addicted to Twitter. Trump is losing it. You know, he could nuke Denmark in a fit of temper. And no, he couldn't because of the two-man rule, which Ted Cruz apparently, even though he wants the job of president, is unaware of the two-man rule. The president cannot launch an attack against another country all by himself. But what Cruz is trying to do is make Donald Trump the story to divert your attention away from the fact that there was obvious cheating going on in Iowa, including two videos, one of them from C-SPAN showing Hillary's people cheating, and Cruz's own stunt of starting the rumor that Ben Carson was dropping out of the race just as the caucuses got underway. So Cruz doesn't want you looking at that. Oh, no. We're going to make Trump the story. We're going to bash Trump. And I think it may backfire. And when we come back from our top of the hour news and commercials, I'll elucidate further for your edification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2 here. Too many knobs and buttons to keep track of over here. Alrighty, phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. We got a caller waiting on the line. I'm going to get to you in just a minute. Donald Trump has come out with a claim in his speech that 300,000 veterans have been left to die, waiting to be seen by the VA. And he's under attack for that. You know, how dare you say that about our military and our government? But in point of fact, there is an Inspector General report that is the source of that. It did happen. The way they're running this war, they're running it like a business. We've got to watch the bottom line here, and we're going to spend all this money to train and equip the soldiers and send them on out to kill, and when they come back crippled, well, why spend more money on them? We can't use them anymore. We'll just park them in their homes and lose their paperwork, and they'll just die and get out of our way. And apparently, that did happen to the tune of 300,000. We're losing more of our soldiers to the VA than we are to ISIS. And it is absolutely, absolutely shameful. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a phone call. Clayton in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Hey, I just wanted to comment on the top of the hour news feed about the IRS computers not working.
Oh, yes.
I just thought it was hysterical.
Well,
I don't know if
they're all on Windows 10, you know. They just got upgraded to Windows 10, and all their old software just broke.
Yeah.
I feel really bad for the Internal Revenue Service right about now.
No, I thought it was hysterical. I'm still laughing when they said, but however, you'll get your refund, but the where's my refund site is not working.
Well, my understanding is that the system to submit your tax returns online is also down. And apparently what they're saying is, you know, forget about the paperwork. It's all a hoax anyway. Just send us your money in and everything will be fine.
Well, and I'm just amazed, you know, as part of the bigger picture, just how quickly things are falling apart in the sense of quality. I tried to repair some things over the holidays and had a company send me 4 parts that were all broken and damaged in some way and couldn't get the right part, and they were just all cracked and everything else. And I've got a stack of parts over in the corner, and they just said, just throw them away. And it's just amazing. Just everywhere I look, it just seems like systems are breaking, products are made so cheap, they're just cracking and disintegrating before you even get them in the door. And it's just a mess. Just the signs of fascism.
It is. That's exactly right. These are the classic symptoms of a fascist economic decline. And, you know, here is where the government going along with the computer companies to indemnify them against product liability comes back to bite them. Whether it's the Internal Revenue Service computers or the computer system running Obamacare or the computer system they could never get to work over at the VA, you know, how are we expected to function as a nation and economy when we have been crippled with tools that simply do not work? And again, kids grow up, they think this is the way it's supposed to be. But, you know, I'm old enough to remember the start of the computer revolution, where computers were built to last because it was a brand new industry, and the software was very simple and elegant and easy to keep running. I'm an old Unix guru. I mean, I got a Commodore VIC-20 up here that still works. But, you know, today it's all corporatized and gigantic, and they've got money and lobbyists, and they're out there saying, you know, we can sell whatever we want, and if it doesn't work, they can't do anything about it. And guess what? Now it's affecting the government's ability to function as well.
Yeah, and I say let them have the best system money can buy. I've been a developer for over 20 years now, and I've worked for companies that have completely gotten rid of their QA department. I mean, they're just gone.
Yeah.
And they just basically throw it out. And now with the cloud, the big thing now is, well, we'll just issue patches every day, every hour, every whatever, and we'll just update it on the fly. And there's been some really bad stories, really bad things that have happened where loss of data, all kinds of things, because this just fly by the seat of your pants, updating and just getting it all out the door as fast as possible is now really starting to come around. It's really starting to be a problem.
Yeah, it really is. It really, really is. You know, we're definitely a failing empire. All right, well, listen, thank you very much, and I'm sure we're all chuckling silently to ourselves over the computer problems that the government is having to deal with. And thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. Getting on back to the political situation, the questions about Iowa are not going away. Ted Cruz wants to make Donald Trump the story, and everybody else is saying, no, something happened in Iowa. We need to know what it was. The Des Moines Register just put out an editorial skewering the Democratic caucuses, calling it a debacle, and demanding an audit of the Iowa Democrat caucuses. They probably ought to do the same thing on the GOP side, saying it reeks of autocracy. And what's really amazing is the Des Moines Register is a Hillary supporter. So here you have this major newspaper in Iowa that supports Hillary saying something stinks about the way the caucuses were run. Now, Sanders hasn't formally requested a recount, but they're reviewing the results on their own precinct by precinct. And the spokeswoman for the Sanders campaign says, yeah, they're finding inconsistencies. Remember, we had an Iowa poll worker called into the show saying that where she was, you know, Trump was leading Cruz 2-1. And everybody that she knows that was working on the caucuses was saying the same thing. So what happened? Somehow, when the numbers got typed into that Microsoft app and they wound up at the other end and they weren't really accurate. Sanders' campaign is finding inaccuracies. And boy, you know, the very first election, and already the American people are saying this thing is dishonest, it's crooked. The 2016 elections are going to make that kerfuffle back in 2000 between Bush and Gore look like a very polite summer brunch in comparison. This is going to get really, really ugly. Now, as you know, next Tuesday is the New Hampshire primary, and the current polling up there in the Granite State, my home state, even though I was born in Boston, I consider myself a New Hampshireman. Trump has 36%. Rubio has taken over second place with 15%. Ted Cruz is in third with 14%. Jeb Bush 8%. John Kasich 7%. Bernie Sanders is leading Hillary Clinton 58% to 36%, a 22-point margin, which means if New Hampshire's primaries are run the way the Iowa caucuses are being run, Ted Cruz will win with 36%, and Hillary Clinton will win with 58%. It's amazing. Now, a couple of things going on here. First of all, like I said before, Bernie Sanders has the home court advantage. He's another New Englander. Second, the entire country now sees both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump as the victims of dirty tricks. And they're going to get out there to support them, just out of a sense of decency and wanting to prove that we, the people, are still in control of our government. They're going to get on out there. Maybe it's a little difficult. They're expecting a major snowstorm in New Hampshire for the primary. You know, that white fluffy stuff that Al Gore and his minions were saying was a thing of the past. They're going to get a lot of it in New Hampshire next week. Another story coming on out of RINF.com. As much as the media would like them to, Trump's supporters are unlikely to evaporate. No, they won't. They're borderline fanatical, and now they're enraged. They all know that Trump got robbed in Iowa, and they're angry, and nothing motivates people more to get out to the polls than anger. Now, Donald Trump is saying there ought to be a do-over in Iowa, and then almost immediately, his plane develops engine trouble on its way to Little Rock, Arkansas. May have to have an emergency landing. Just a coincidence, I'm sure. Just a coincidence here. Until you realize how many planes were falling out of the sky over Arkansas when Bill Clinton was governor. Just a coincidence. I'm sure it has to be a coincidence. Absolutely. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, Ted Cruz has sent out a new mailer to his supporters and would-be supporters and voters that features a Lincoln Memorial that is covered with ISIS. And he's out there warning voters that the United States is under assault from Islamic fanatics, and only he, Ted Cruz, from Canada, can save us all. Now, the United States is under assault from the money junkies. But they don't want you to see them as the problem. That's why they're trying to divert you onto Muslims or some other convenient group. Now, Sarah Palin, on her Facebook post, has come out very angry over Ted Cruz because of that stunt he pulled with the Ben Carson rumor. And this is an about face for her because Sarah Palin campaigned for Cruz in Texas for his first Senate seat. And he actually used her endorsements as part of his campaign and TV commercials, something I noticed that Donald Trump has not repeated. Sarah Palin's reputation out here in the real world is not very good. Caribou Barbie. All righty, we're going to go ahead and grab phone calls. Terry in Oregon, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael, I'm retired military, and you were talking about the veterans thing this morning.
Yes.
And the real dirty secret, as far as I'm concerned, is ever since the drawdown in troops from the Middle East, they've been kicking good people out of the military with 15 years and 17 years and with nothing bad on their records. See, they did an audit, halfway-ass audit, and they found out the military retirements are too big of a budget, so they're screwing guys.
Yes.
They pushed this professional military thing a few years ago, and guys have bought it, and they've got families and kids now, and now they're 17 years and staff NCOs, and they're getting kicked out. You know, I think it's just disgraceful.
Yeah, to cheat them out of their retirement and their pension here. I had it happen to a friend of mine, 19 years. I mean, literally within months of his 20-year anniversary, and, we're sorry, we don't need you anymore. You're gone. You're out of here.
Absolutely, and they need to save the money for their pet projects like the F-35 and all the military industrial BS that's going on.
Yes. Now, you got it. My position here is a very, very simple one. Whether you agree with the wars themselves or not, and I certainly do not, the responsibility for the wars is with that civilian leadership, the politicians. We as a nation do owe our serving military that they be cared for if they have been wounded in the line of duty. The government takes huge amounts of our tax money on the promise they're going to take care of the wounded veterans, along with the water supply, the roads, the schools, and everything. And obviously, it's just another one of the promises they've made that are broken. And, of course, adding insult to injury is the revelation that this Wounded Warrior charity is not doing that much for the actual veterans. It's another scam. All righty, let's see. We're going to go back to the telephones here to John in Mississippi. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Mike? Hope you're having a good one. Yeah, about the Iowa thing, I don't think this would be such a big deal with the Donald Trump and Ted Cruz thing if it wasn't so obvious with Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. I mean, the man didn't get any really airtime on the media before this, and he came within 0.4.
0.2. The new official total is Hillary won Iowa by 0.2%.
Yeah, I think what they're really scared of is nobody thought that his ideas would resonate, and I think it's like everybody's starting to see now, because how would Hillary Clinton get all 6 coin tosses, you know? And, you know, like I said, I mean, I don't think it would have been such a big deal unless if it wasn't so obvious with the Bernie Sanders and Hillary thing, because, I mean, Bernie's people, Bernie's people, they're probably from all walks of life. That's what I'm thinking. I'm not for one or the other. I'm actually a veteran myself. I joined the military when I was 16. I was in boot camp at 16 in that split ops program in '06. And what I think of the message that's resonating is that people are tired of greed, like you said. And I was just thinking to myself today, like, imagine if the U.S. used all the money that we use in the past 10, 15 years, instead of on wars and everything, actually bringing in people, the best people from the world, and not only bringing them in, but using the money to better have school curriculums in our own schools, and just basically using the money for you know, humanitarian things for ourselves. And
well, that would be the nice ideal, and that's what government is supposed to do. But you need to understand that along with money addiction, there's also power addiction. And, you know, power addicts want more power, and their only priority is maintaining that power and control. And every time they feel that might be slipping, they grab a little bit more, and that's what's going on now in Washington, D.C., to the point where, you know, they're trying to control every single aspect of our lives, keep us under surveillance. They're scared of us, but they don't want to give up that power and that wealth. And you're absolutely right. If you look at the huge amount of money that has been spent in all these wars, it could have been spent here in the United States of America reviving our manufacturing, you know, producing healthy agricultural produce that people want to buy, and rebuilding our infrastructure. But from the point of view of the power and money junkies, they want all the wealth and power to themselves, and they want everybody else poor and struggling, because that's what helps maintain control.
You're right. And that's why these elections, like you said, they're going to be real interesting, because you don't see this type of stuff in only Latin American countries, but what you also see in Latin American countries is like you saw in Flint. And what you don't see in Latin American countries is like what you see here. If that happened, I could just imagine. I have 2 kids, a 4 and a 4-month-old, and I could just imagine the parents. I mean, you have all these hopes, you have all these dreams, and to have that happen to you by your own.
Yes.
And then you heard the callers that called and tried to blame it on the people.
Yeah.
You know, what I believe is I'm not, you know, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm of Spanish origin, but I'm as white as life. But you did, the new racism term, it's like a class racism, you know, it's like welfare is like.
Well, what's going on here? I have to cut you off because we're about to hit a commercial break here. You know, what's going on is the typical divide and conquer. The U.S. government wants racial tension. They want friction with the illegal immigrants and the refugees. They want us fighting amongst ourselves, because then we cannot unite to fight against them. That's what's going on. Same tactic they were using back in the 60s under COINTELPRO. Anyway, John, got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and we're going to go ahead and grab some phone calls and clear the lines here. Keith in Montana, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I had 2 things. You had those 2 veterans on there. I'll do a quick one on that one. I noticed on Democracy Now!, Amy Goodman had a bunch of military boys that were on there that had complained about being raped in the military. And if you Google that, you'll see that most rapes in the U.S. military are male on male. But anyway,
the few, the proud. I'll let you finish that.
Those that complain get Section 10 out of the military, losing all benefits. So that's just one thing. But anyway, the thing I want to call about was it kind of had to do with a lot of postings you've had on your website lately. One is on this El Chapo and everything like that with Fast and Furious. But the one thing that got me is years ago, well, about 3 or 4 years ago, I was looking into all this fatherland security stuff, and I came across the Sentry program. And the Sentry program is a thing from Homeland Security or Fatherland Security, Heil Hitler, where they do a full iris scan, a 10-point finger ID, full background check, all that stuff like that. And then they issue speed passes, and this isn't predominantly to just one country like Mexico or anything like that, but It allows people that have these decals to put on their window and on their license plate a speed pass to bypass all borders and customs.
Yes.
Well, I started researching that more and more, and I found out that most of the drug busts all through San Diego that netted over $400,000 worth of drugs and stuff were all members of that Century program.
Well, I mean, come on. Our entire government is tangled up with all this drug smuggling. The CIA was bringing heroin back from Vietnam. Ever since the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan, the poppies are blooming and the heroin's pouring into our country. The biggest drug dealer in the country is the country. That's the reality. And so, any system that bypasses law enforcement is going to be used to protect that drug importation channel.
Yeah, there was another interesting portion about that, too, that I forget the article's name, but I read it, where it's about how the CIA, with this Oliver North deal and stuff like that we remember so much in our youth like that. But anyway, they imported all the drugs into the inner cities to drive down the population, mainly blacks and stuff, to also drive real estate properties values down as homes were condemned and stuff, and then big corporation America bought them up.
Yes.
And again, like you'd mentioned earlier, just a little bit ago, that all this racial tension and stuff, whether it be blacks or Hispanics, I mean, these are the same people we played with as kids. Whether they're Koreans, Mexicans, Germans, whatever like that, whatever will put people at odds. I still remember in the 70s how, those Russians are going to be effing your mom and your sisters,
Yes.
It's always something that want to keep you at odds with someone else,
Yeah, in order to control you. I mean, people left to themselves are generally going to get along. They want to just have a job. They want to make money. They want to take care of their families. Other than that, they want to be left alone. People don't go out and look for trouble unless they've been placed in an environment where that's a viable option. And, we're talking about the out-of-control crime in this country. Look at the poverty that's been imposed on our nation as a whole to keep the money junkies happy. People can't find jobs. If they find a job, it can't cover the bills. Yeah, they're going to go on out and they're going to deal drugs, or they're going to engage in blackmail or the rest of it. It's not, they don't even really have a choice anymore.
Yeah. I-10-5 is one of their sheriffs here, which is another ham operator. But he was discussing me about how his income is on his pay and his wife's pay and how they're living paycheck to paycheck. And then, of course, we were commenting, and we were sitting there for a little bit there on the side of Highway 93 there. But anyway, we were kind of commenting about there was no traffic. And I said, yeah, I said, just drive down the road here. It says all the businesses are shut down.
Yes.
Stores are going out of business, everything like that, But they can spend trillions of dollars fighting wars and these proxy mercenaries, like I had mentioned before, $700 and some odd million plus to arm and train these Syrian rebels, but New York can't afford snowplows for $140,000 a piece, nor train drivers to use them.
Or Flint can't afford safe drinking water for just $100 a day.
Or California can't control their LP or their methane gas.
Oh, man, what a mess that's turning into. I mean, the nation's falling apart. And if you really think about it, the primary responsibility for the government is to take care of our nation. They have failed miserably. They've stolen all your money and spent it on themselves and their buddies and their wars, and they're having a real fun time, and they're laughing at you because you're having to drink the toxic water or breathe the methane or, damage your own car trying to get down the roads with all the potholes. They're laughing at you. They took everything, including the lives of your children. And you stand there and say, please, sir, may I have another?
Yeah, I want to, before you run out of time here, Anthony Bourdain and one of his shows there on Jamaica on Netflix, I thought was really interesting. He was referring to the great economy that Jamaica once had.
Yes. And
who was buying up all the properties and stuff down there. But he made a issue that was interesting about, save the whales, save the dolphins, save the beaches, stuff like that. And he says, for who? He says, who is going to be able to afford it? It's only going to be for those elite ones.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely. Yeah. They did the same thing to Haiti after that monster quake they had down there. Under the guise of charity, they went down and they just bought everything up, shoved the Haitian people over to one end, let them die of cholera, and they're building all these luxury resorts. The Haitian people aren't going to be in there. They may not even be hired to go on in there because of the disease rates. It's just another use whatever happens to make ourselves richer and more powerful. And that's how these elites think. They really think, they subscribe to the notion that they are entitled to all of life's blessings, and anything that they do to get it is perfectly justified and blessed by whatever imaginary playmate in the sky they happen to be praying to this week.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right, Michael, that's all I had for you, okay?
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over here to Roseanne in North Carolina. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. Sorry to belabor the point, but I'm going to go back to Iowa.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering, I came across this article today that talked about a gentleman by the name of Dan Gabriel, who is an ex-CIA counterterrorism officer, and he is Ted Cruz's PR guy.
Okay.
And I have a tweet because somebody took a screenshot of it when it happened, and it happened at 7:07 p.m. on Monday.
Yes.
And this is him tweeting that says, source inside Ben Carson NH campaign just confirmed to me, real Ben Carson is out, choose Cruz.
Yes.
And then he deleted the tweet. So I'm just wondering, well, first of all, and this guy, Dan Gabriel, like I said, he's ex-CIA. He used to work for CNN. So, he, no doubt his boots are sitting next to CNN's bed, is all I can say.
Well, his boots are sitting to a lot of different beds, but we all know that Cruz started the rumor, and then once it got picked up by CNN took the tweet and made it viral. And then, they tried to cover their tracks, but by then it was too late because people tend to scroll back and grab the tweets off the screen. Yeah, this was Ted Cruz trying to sabotage Ben Carson and get his votes. I mean, this election is crooked.
Because I think Ben Carson's a decent human being. He's a good egg.
You know
he
something?
Really is,
okay, I don't want to get into which candidate is better or not. The issue here is whether our elections are fair, honest, and accurate.
That's all that matters.
Because if they're not,
I only want to win fair and square. Because if you get to the finish line without your frickin' integrity, what's the point? Then what's the point of
they don't care about integrity. They wouldn't be in politics if they cared about integrity. But my position is, any government that claims authority over us but can't prove they actually won the election, why should we listen to them? Why should we pay their bills? Why should we let our children be killed in their wars of conquest? We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And before we take this next phone call, I got an email from a fan of the new X-Files saying that, the episode I tuned into was pretty lame, but that I should go back and look at the first 2 episodes because they were very good. All right, in fairness, I'll hunt them down on the cable box and take a look. But the one that Claire and I saw, and I did like the original X-Files. In the early seasons when they were dealing with the folklore myths that I grew up with as a kid, the Mothman and the rest of it. Then when they kind of got into this repetitive thing about the conspiracy to sell the Earth to the aliens, I kind of started tuning out at that particular point here. All right, we're going to grab ourselves a phone call. Al in Canada, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I hope you and Claire are doing well.
We're doing fine, thank you.
Great. I don't really generally like doing this, but I have to say it. Ben Carson is a good egg. Do people like to be lied to? I mean, isn't he a teller of tall tales?
Yeah, he is. The Great Pyramid was used for storing grain, and his West Point thing, and I'm sorry, Ben Carson. He was still a victim of Ted Cruz chicanery, and I think Cruz figured Carson's not going to win anyway. I'm just going to steal his vote so that I can get ahead of Donald Trump. And but again, I mean, we're just starting the election year, and already the American people are saying this thing is crooked. I'm seeing all these other articles coming out saying something stinks in the Democratic Party. Well, let's be fair. Both sides are cheating. They're all cheating. That's the point. We have to be on guard, and every time they cheat, we have to point it out and say, these people are cheating.
Yeah, I hope it gets better. Also, I wanted to touch on this $10 a barrel tax.
Yes.
Oil that Obama wants to put through. What, to fund more wars?
Just to keep the money junkie. Well, I don't know what he's going to do with the money. Same thing he's doing with when he finally gets his carbon tax, and they're just going to spend it on keeping this thing going a little bit longer, but they're not going to be able to hold it together. We're going to be into hyperinflation we're already in an inflation cycle, and they keep running up bubbles like in real estate prices to act as a cash sink so they can bury that instantly created money so that the inflationary pressures don't show up. But it's falling apart already. We're seeing it in food prices out here. They've just gone right through the roof.
We see it up here in Canada because a lot of our produce this time of year comes from the States. I mean, it's ridiculous sometimes. But, hey, it's a race to the bottom, Mike. Keep up the good work. I love your show. I continue to watch it. I continue to listen to it. And I continue to tell everybody about it. Thank you very much for taking my call, sir.
Thank you very much. And, all right, now, getting on back to the Clintons and dirty politics here. Story coming out of newsforge.com called The Clinton System. And it's basically reprising the information that Larry Klayman collected for his RICO lawsuit against the Clinton Foundation, which was sadly thrown out of court by a Clinton-appointed judge who refused to recuse himself despite the obvious conflict of interest. But basically, it comes down to the fact that while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, the State Department authorized $165 billion in commercial arms sales to 20 nations that had donated money to the Clinton Foundation. And everybody's scratching their head over $600,000 from Goldman Sachs for 3 speeches. It's not for the speeches, it's a payoff. When you do a favor for somebody and you want to keep it hidden, the payoff isn't handed to you in a brown paper bag in an alley. You're paid $600,000 from speeches, or you get a huge book deal with a multi-million-dollar advance. They know it's not going to sell, but that's the payoff. That's how it works. We have a video up on YouTube, one of many that is surfacing. Hillary Clinton, a career criminal, talking about all the things in travel office firings, the cattle futures trades, all of it. And it's amazing. This lady has escaped prosecution more times than El Chapo. Now, there's another story coming out from the Trenches World Report, and they're talking about how the National Archives is fighting a lawsuit which was seeking to get copies of indictments being prepared against Hillary Clinton during the Whitewater investigation. Remember, Hillary Clinton was on the investigative committee investigating, I'm confusing my waters, during that whole Whitewater investigation. Whitewater, Flowerwood, Castle Grand, Morgan Guarantee, Iran-Contra, all of that mess. There were indictments being prepared against Hillary Clinton. And after everybody got distracted by stained blue dresses and the rest of it, the indictments were never handed down. But people are saying they want to see what was in there, because there was a Whitewater prosecutor that was going to prepare them. I think it was probably the first one, the one who was actually honestly investigating the death of White House Deputy Counsel Vince Foster, and then he got thrown out, and they brought in Ray Starr to take over. And Ray Starr's job was to bury it. And Ray Starr, I've got the names all wrong. I'm sorry, I'm old. Alzheimer's. Anyway, here's the point. There were indictments being prepared. Ken Starr, that's the name I was struggling for. And Ken Starr is dirty because when Reagan's Attorney General, William French Smith, changed the rules to allow the CIA to associate with drug criminals without needing to report it to the DEA, the CIA's license to smuggle, Ken Starr was his assistant at Reagan's Department of Justice. So Ken Starr is known all along about the drug smuggling that was going on. So he was given charge of the Whitewater investigation to make that story go away. And that's why Ken Starr spent all of his time about Monica Lewinsky and, all this other stuff, a little tawdry sex scandal to distract Americans from the real scandal of government-sanctioned drug dealing, bringing in drugs being sold to your children. So the National Archives is trying to fight the release of these documents, claiming it would be a violation of Hillary Clinton's privacy. Okay, now, the issue that I have on this is that crimes are not private affairs because there are victims. The fact that the crimes are perpetrated against outside parties voids a claim to privacy. And it's just more cover-up to protect the Clintons. And we keep hearing that Hillary is sending out messages to everybody that if she is indicted or arrested or if she doesn't win the White House, she is going to blow the whistle on everything that the Clintons have been involved in, everybody they were involved in with doing it, bring it all down. And it's a very real, credible threat. I don't think Hillary understands she's making herself a live liability right now. There's a wonderful little video we put up on the web page where Clinton's spokesperson is being asked about this Clinton super PAC that got millions of dollars from Wall Street. And he dodges the question about Wall Street and says, well, you know, we're being supported by people all across the country and we welcome support from all parties there. It's a non-answer answer, in other words, like the one that Obama gave in his first press conference as president when Helen Thomas asked him, what nations have nuclear weapons in the Middle East right now, today, this moment? And Obama didn't answer it. He danced around and said, well, we view proliferation as a serious issue. And, of course, the next day, Helen Thomas was gone. And amazingly enough, I can't believe she's this stupid. Hillary Clinton is bringing back the vast right-wing conspiracy. She was apparently being interviewed on CBS yesterday morning. And out there saying the vast right-wing conspiracy is even better funded and out in the open. Now remember, she blamed the vast right-wing conspiracy for the Monica Lewinsky scandal. And then, of course, it turned out that, yes, Bill and Monica had been in the Oval Office. But if she's bringing back the vast right-wing conspiracy, she's in panic mode. She is in panic mode to be recycling that canard. Okay, let's see. Bernie Sanders has Goldman Sachs CEO running scared. They're saying Sanders' candidacy is a dangerous moment. It's a threat to the nation. No, it's a threat to the wallets of Goldman Sachs. The money junkies want a fascist president. They don't want any socialists with their weird ideas about everybody deserves a fair share of life's blessings. That's not what America's about these days. We're going to take a break for news and commercials, and we'll be right back. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 877-300-7645. And Ben Carson is not waiting very long to repay Ted Cruz for that dirty trick Cruz pulled on him on Monday. Carson's out there saying that evangelicals should think twice about Ted Cruz. He certainly doesn't seem to have much in the way of morality when it comes to campaigning. And Ben, my advice to you is you make sure that pre-flight check is really thorough before you get on board, because candidates seem to be getting a lot of aircraft problems, and, you know, so many people that the Clintons didn't like fell out of the sky, and, you know, Paul Wellstone, that whole thing. So you make sure that pre-flight is really, really good. All right. We posted another flashback video regarding the creation of software that is designed to steal elections. It's important everybody in America knows this is going on, especially inside those computers. You don't know what's in there. These are private companies. They will not allow anybody to inspect their software. The voting machines are certified by a different company that is paid to say these machines are honest and accurate, but they don't know. There's no way to know. There is no way to know that the software isn't being changed. In fact, I remember back during the 2008 elections, it was a big stink where technicians were coming in to upgrade the software on the voting machines just before the polls opened. It's ridiculous. Now, as you know, Obama visited this major mosque to lecture us all on Islamophobia, and of course failed to mention the fact that U.S. foreign policy is behind much of the anger going on in the Middle East. And certainly our corporate media and people like Ted Cruz are fanning up anti-Muslim sentiment for the same reason the Nazis demonized the Jews. Gives them somebody to blame for all the things that are going on, a scapegoat for the public to take their anger out on, rather than take it out on the government. The 2-minute hate. Now, somebody, and latest word is it is a Jewish peace group, printed up 10,000 parody copies of the New York Times, put them out on the streets of New York City, reimagining the paper as balanced on the issue of Palestine, to sort of underscore the fact that the New York Times itself has a very pro-Israel, anti-Palestine bias. I think that's very clever that they did that, and I hope a lot of people got to see that. Now, getting on to the issue of immigration. There, apparently down in Missoula County, there was a protest on Monday. People braving the snow and ice, which Al Gore told us was a thing of the past, to basically have this rally protesting a plan by the Obama administration to flood their community with refugees. And remember, we pointed out earlier in the week, they're not sending these refugees into large cities where they could be absorbed and form their own little colony. They're spreading them out, trying to blend them in with everybody, going into these small conservative towns all across America. There's obviously an agenda at work here over and beyond finding homes for these people. Shifting the voting demographics toward the Democratic side, maybe one. And I've been thinking about this idea of everybody blending together and holding hands and singing Kumbaya, and thinking the real agenda may actually be the reverse. Remember, the government is going to cling to power only so long as we can be tricked into fighting with each other. Now, we have seen the U.S. government try and spark race riots over the last couple of years with all these police shootings, and the American people aren't going for it because we know that's what the government wants. So the plan B, or C, or D, or Z, may be to throw all these criminal refugees into our communities and get us fighting against them. To have a civil war, blood on the streets of America, fighting each other, fighting to protect our homes, fighting to keep our women from being raped, so we're too busy to look at what the central government's been doing. That would certainly work for them. It would explain this flood of refugees into Europe, because the European people are standing up to the European Union and flooding our country with illegal immigrants and refugees to get us all hot and bothered about our local communities, so we're not able to stand up to Washington, D.C. It's a panic move, but it may be what's going on, because over in the Washington Post, they have an article about how the Border Patrol has been given a new stand-down policy, where border agents have been officially told to release all illegal immigrants, to stop requiring them to show up at deportation hearings. And they're not even allowed to track the illegal immigrants. It's been described as a go-free policy. One of the Border Patrol officers was saying, we might as well abolish the immigration laws. Yeah, that's what they're trying to do. The New World Order. There are no more borders. Anybody can go wherever they want, into your home, steal your television set, rape your women. Life under the New World Order. Now, another general has gone public, blown the whistle. This was reported in Rolling Stone, where the Army has been using PSYOP techniques on U.S. senators to motivate them to give more money and authority and power to the military. And apparently the orders came from the command of Lieutenant General William Caldwell, a 3-star general in charge of training Afghan troops. And over the 4-month period last year, a military unit devoted to information operations at Camp Eggers in Kabul was pressured to target visiting senators and other VIPs who met with Caldwell in order to get them to go along with more money and more supplies. Now, we understand the government propagandizes the American people. The laws against the use of propaganda against American citizens was repealed not too long ago. But going after members of Congress to brainwash them to go along with the military-industrial complex, that's crossing a very, very dangerous line. Now, getting on up into Oregon, a federal grand jury has indicted 16 people in the Malheur Refuge takeover. And we're seeing the wheels of injustice grinding along, because nobody's indicting the Bureau of Land Management for being in violation of the Constitution's Enclave Clause or any of the other crimes they've committed. The people standing up for the rule of law and the Constitution, they're the criminals. Look how they went after Edward Snowden for blowing the whistle on the NSA. But Hillary Clinton handing out classified documents all over her private email server. Nothing has happened to her. Violation of Title 18, ordering classifications headings to be stripped from the emails. She should be under arrest. She isn't. Oh, and by the way, the Hillary campaign's latest tactic to evade this whole email scandal is they're trying to dig up stories of how other people in government got classified documents on their unsecured private servers. So it's no big deal. They're all doing it. You know, if everybody's committing murder, you still take the murderers you find and you put them in prison. They're thrashing around here right now. Getting on back to Oregon, apparently a Democratic member of the Oregon legislature is introducing a bill that is going to dump all the costs of the occupation onto the protesters. I think that should be overturned on principles of First Amendment, because this started as a protest, and the government escalated it. Now, here's a fun story. This is coming out of Blacklisted News. Apparently, over in New York, there was this New York Police Department cop whose job was in the Vice Squad arresting prostitutes. And he just got arrested himself because it turned out he was running a major prostitution ring in New York. No wonder they were never getting arrested. It's amazing. Just completely out of control. More of the same when we come back from the commercials. Hello, hi America. Welcome back to the show here. And I don't know what's going on with all of our politicians and our police, whether they all need to test their tap water for dangerous chemicals or whether they're all zoned out of their brains on prescription psychiatric medication. Down in San Diego, a district attorney investigator has been suspended because he was at a bar and bit a female prosecutor on her rear end, hard enough to leave a bruise. And then we have this other story down in Georgia. The mayor, John Dobson, was arrested for impersonating a police officer while smoking marijuana. Apparently he had a couple of puffs, decided he was just going to go on down, help himself to a police car, and drive around town. Wow. I mean, it's just insane out there. All right, we're going to go ahead and grab a phone call. Charles from South Carolina. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I just wanted to know that there's an article up on, I think it's Freedom's Outpost, about the BLM thing. I wanted to get you to review it and let us know what you think. Okay, where did you put that again? I think it's Freedom Outpost. Oh, yeah, I've seen them before, and I'll definitely take a look at that. But the situation is deteriorating. I mean, I'm hoping that there's not going to be any more bloodshed. This was a letter from a couple of judges around that area of the country. I'm gone. All right. I will definitely take a look at that. Thank you very much. Now then, getting on down to Flint, Michigan. Interesting article coming out of Nation of Change. What really poisoned the water in Flint, Michigan? And no, this is not an analysis of the chemicals and the water content and the pipes and everything. They're basically saying this all came down to money. Because the emergency manager imposed on Flint as part of the city's bankruptcy and restructuring was thinking like a CEO. We've got to control costs, we've got to control costs, we've got to control costs, and if people are getting sick, well, that's just too bad. That's not a factor anymore. Our allegiance is to the bottom line, to keep the money junkies happy. That's what it was all about. Now, government was not allowed to run this country to make the bankers happy. In fact, the very act of creating the United States of America made the bankers very unhappy. Because back then, we had a government-issued currency, a public currency managed as a public utility, that was not accruing interest to private central bankers, and private central bankers hate that. So we're back under our third private central bank, the Federal Reserve, and it is private. It's no more federal than Federal Express. And like all other private central banks, it is designed to produce more debt than money with which to pay that debt, to use that debt to enslave the people and the nation, and ultimately to acquire all the real hard assets of the country. Privatization, put it in their pocket, and you spend the rest of your life working to rent what used to belong to you. That's the plan. And they've pulled this off for 300 years all across the globe. And everywhere private central banks are allowed to issue the public currency as a loan at interest,
The people are plunged into poverty. It's happening all across Europe. It's happening here in the United States of America. And ultimately, the politicians are loyal to the bankers, which is why we had a Flint and Michigan government that was perfectly okay with children drinking lead-contaminated water, damaging their brains permanently because it saved $100 a day. Now, the emergency manager who supervised the switching of the water supply has now resigned from his current position, and he has openly said he is refusing to testify at the congressional investigation as to what the heck went on down there. Now, I'm not holding out much hope for the congressional investigation. Congress investigated the dangers of SSRIs, but they did nothing about it because the pharmaceutical companies write really generous campaign donation checks. What they're trying to do is act like they're doing something about the problem. They're trying to convince you they're doing something about the problem. But again, they're playing the fireman role. They're coming on in after the disaster has happened and they're going to act like they're dealing with it. But the damage is already done, and the damage in this case is permanent. What government should be doing is preventing these things from happening in the first place, and they keep failing. Whether it's the Flint water, Gulf oil disaster, Hanford, WHIP, the Porter Ranch gas blowout, they're just sitting there counting their money and having a party until something blows up and makes the headlines, and then they say, we've got to go down there and act like we're in charge of this. We've got to protect our phony baloney jobs. Now, the congressional hearing is making a big show going after this guy who defied them. Republican Representative Jason Chavez is saying he's going to hunt down Darnell Early and drag him to Washington. And they've asked the U.S. Marshals to hunt this guy down and give him the subpoena. And all he's going to do is come on in and say, well, it was a cost-cutting measure. That was it. It was a cost-cutting measure. Now, as you know, when this whole Flint water thing blew up, the Nestle Corporation and a couple of others came on in and said, we're going to give you some bottled water. There you are. Here's enough water to last you 2-3 days. Aren't we generous? The problem is, of course, Nestle is under fire for its ties to the Snyder administration and the fact that over in that part of the country, just as in California, Nestle's in the business of sucking out the healthy, clean water in the ground, putting it in bottles and selling it back to the people at a huge markup. And what they're leaving behind is the water unsafe to drink. They're doing it in California. 2 of California's 3 aquifers have now become contaminated by fracking fluid. Nestle is sucking clean water out of the remaining aquifer on the basis of a license that expired a long time ago. But while that case is in court, dragging on and dragging on and dragging on, Nestle's still pumping the water out, putting it in bottles, and selling it back to the people of California at a huge markup. Remember, the CEO of Nestle came out and said, you do not have a right to water. Water should be owned by the corporations and commoditized and sold to you. You have to pay for water. And remember, there are some parts in this country where you can't even collect rainwater on your own property. Those are the king's raindrops, you knave. You will let them go into the ground, and then Nestle will suck it out and sell it to you. How long is it going to be before they start saying that you don't have a natural right to air, and you'll have to buy your air, your breathing air, in tanks for your home? That's where this is headed. Now, up in Seattle, there is a theater group that is getting ready to mount a play that is based on the Tylenol murders. It's starting to get some ink. It was in the Daily Herald. When we come back from our commercial break, we're going to talk about that case and why it is interesting that it is finally starting to see the light of day. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Now, longtime listeners will remember that we have had Michelle Rosen as a guest on our show many times. She is the daughter of one of the victims of the Tylenol poisonings. Michelle was 8 years old when she got to watch her mother fall down and basically die of cyanide poisoning. And the official story was there was some nutcase who was running around opening up Tylenol bottles and putting in cyanide just for giggles and grins. And this, of course, led to all of these little safety seals and all the rest of that jam under your fingernail. But it turns out there's more to the story than that, because the evidence seems to indicate that somebody inside Johnson & Johnson's supply chain was doing this with the goal of murdering a specific target and then concealing that by making it look like a random crazy. Now, if it's inside the Johnson & Johnson supply chain, Johnson & Johnson faced serious civil liability. So they said, we'll save a few bucks and we'll just tell everybody it was somebody on the outside, somebody doing it at the supermarket level. And there's been a lot of work and a lot of research basically indicating that there was a cover-up, and the government was part of it. And let's see, we seem to be under a DOS attack at the moment. That'll hopefully take care of that. So anyway, the story's just been going on for a very, very long time. And now it turns out there is a theater group up in Seattle getting ready to put on a stage play about the Tylenol murders and the moral conundrums supposedly faced by the police in Johnson & Johnson. And it also focuses on Michelle Rosen's tireless pursuit of the truth. Now, Michelle has not read the script, neither have I, so we're not sure how objective they're going to be about it, but the theater is going to be opening. We're trying to get the director to come on the show, and of course we're going to have Michelle back as well to talk about this. And, sooner or later, these things do come to light, and Johnson & Johnson's going to say, oh, that happened so long ago, and we've got all new management. It's in the past. Unfortunately, these things keep on happening over and over and over again. All right, getting on to the world of glyphosate. A recent study conducted by Dr. Nancy Swanson and the president of the International Federation of Organic Agricultural Movements, Andre Liu, has found once again that glyphosate is causing a wave of chronic diseases across America. It is highly toxic. It is sprayed on your food. It gets into the food. It's actually sprayed on harvested food to make it look fresher for longer. And it's very dangerous. Now, the good news is that out in the West Coast, cities are starting to sue Monsanto over these toxic chemicals that are being dropped into the environment. Seattle, Washington became the latest addition to the list of cities filing lawsuits against Monsanto, including San Diego, San Jose, Oakland, and Berkeley in California, along with Spokane. And basically, they're suing the company for knowingly promoting the severely hazardous use of polychlorinated biphenyls, more commonly known as PCBs, because it makes money. That's all that really matters in the United States. If it makes money, it's good. If it loses money, it's bad. Article coming out of Investment Watch blog. 194 countries are now clamping down on all forms of synthetic biology, which means non-natural life forms, whether it's GMO or hybridization or splicing or whatever. They're clamping down on it because of the very clear dangers. Over in Florida, the Governor Rick Scott has declared a state of emergency in counties where the Zika virus is popping up. The counties are Miami-Dade, Hillsborough, Lee, and Santa Rosa. There have been 9 people diagnosed with Zika in Florida, although officials are saying they all got the disease while they were outside of the United States of America. Well, it's kind of hard to know. I mean, it's certainly what you want to say to protect your tourist economy. When dengue fever first surfaced here in Hawaii, we had the lady love of a very good friend of ours who worked at one of the local TV stations. She came down with it, and the media was saying, oh, she had to have gotten it from outside the state, except she hadn't been anywhere. And now, of course, we had our big surge of dengue down there on the Big Island, which we're being told is fading away. But we're already seeing signs that Zika is being exploited to sell pharmaceutical products, and there is another cover-up as to what's really going on, because they're still trying to sell the idea that the Zika virus is the cause of this surge in birth defects in Brazil, of abnormally small brains, abnormally small skulls. And what's really interesting is people are now taking Associated Press to task, article over an activist post, basically saying that the AP, in its article of January 27th, literally in a single paragraph had the numbers that undermine the idea that Zika is connected with microcephaly. But they just dropped it and let it go and went on with it. Oh yeah, it's all the fault of Zika, which tells us they may be covering up for somebody else. We do know that it's connected with that release of GM mosquitoes 3 years ago, right where the microcephaly and Zika outbreaks both exploded. Are they connected? Is it purely a causal relationship? We're not sure. But everybody's hopping on board trying to get money for it, and apparently, according to the United Nations Nuclear Agency, they are coming up with a plan to eradicate the male Zika insects with radiation. They're basically going to try and sterilize the mosquitoes with X-ray or gamma rays. Going to wind up with a mosquito-zilla. It's one harebrained scheme after the other after the other. The GM mosquito released 3 years ago in Brazil was supposed to get rid of this mosquito, because the offspring, when these genetically modified mosquitoes interbred with the natural variety, they were going to produce new mosquitoes who would die before reaching reproductive age. But that didn't work, clearly. So let's try irradiating them. Amazing. Over in Ukraine, remember we were talking about how there was an accidental, maybe, release of a flu from a U.S. biological warfare laboratory, and it sickened a lot of people. It is spreading. 190 people in Ukraine have now died of this new flu epidemic. And they were calling it the Californian flu. Its actual designation is AH1N1. The CDC has added 3 more vaccines to the childhood immunization schedule. And basically, it's 74 doses, 53 injections by age 17. The kids are looking like pincushions. And many of these vaccines are known to be totally worthless, ineffective, and some of them are dangerous, but by golly, they're going to pass laws to make sure you buy this stuff and stick it into your kid's arm. Because it makes money. And that's all that counts. In the United States of America, we have to make money. Storm drops more than a foot of snow in parts of northwestern Wisconsin. We know that in New Hampshire, for the primary next Tuesday, they're expecting a major snowstorm. And get this, the latest thing blamed on global warming, your pets are getting depressed. Pet depression, it's a crisis, and it's caused by global warming. Don't you want to pay your carbon taxes for little Rex or little Kitty? We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We got some breaking news. The latest polls out of New Hampshire. Sanders is leading Hillary Clinton 2-1. It's going to take a lot of vote rigging to reverse that, but I'm sure she'll give it the old college try. Other news, apparently Barack Obama has signed the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, it is still up to Congress to ratify it or not. This is a giveaway of our national sovereignty to corporate control. That's all it is. It's the rise of the corporate state. And we've already seen in Flint, Michigan, how corporate management feels about taking care of the actual people. Corporate management serves the corporation. It's amazing that we're here. I mean, you remember the original RoboCop movies? We're there. We're absolutely there. All right. Now, we were talking about Zika. We were talking about vaccines. The CDC is ramping up even more for you. We know from the numbers that even the Associated Press reported, the link between Zika and these birth defects isn't supported. The Zika virus has been around for 70 years. And it's never caused microcephaly before. It hasn't. So what's going on? Well, it turns out, starting at the beginning of 2015, first part of last year, pregnant women were mandated by the Brazilian government to have what's called the Tdap vaccine, tetanus, diphtheria, and a cellular pertussis. They started getting this vaccine in January of last year, and the cases of microcephaly started appearing in October 10 months later. In the space of 2 months, October to December, 2,400 cases had been reported, at which point the Brazilian government declared a state of emergency. That looks to me like a very solid case that these birth defects on these babies are linked to that vaccine. And I'm sure the corporate media is going to go and say, oh, it's the Zika, it's Zika's terrible, Zika, it's all the fault of Zika here. We can't report that vaccines are dangerous because they make money. And making money is what we're all about, even if we're crippling people in the process. Because they'll need to spend more money to go back to the doctors and get taken care of. See how it works? The sicker you are, the richer we get. I am appalled. Whatever happened to that principle from Hippocrates? First of all, do no harm. Seems to have gone away. Now then, during the heyday of the global warming people and everybody wanted to go to alternative energy, and we had all of these solar power companies that came up with huge government subsidies and loan guarantees, and then they all failed. The managers all got rich on their salaries and bonuses, and the American taxpayer picked up the losses. The other one, of course, are the wind turbines. And there's a bit of a problem with them. They are very expensive. The banks will loan you all kinds of money to build them. And over in the North and Baltic Sea, the wind turbines there have to run for 25 years before they break even, before they pay off the bank loans. The problem is these turbines don't last that long. And apparently they are breaking down from the harsh sea environment, because apparently whoever built these wind turbines thought they worked really good in the laboratory in the warehouse, but they're not really protected against salt. Here in the U.S., one of the leading providers of those wind turbines has now gone out of business, and as their turbines start to fall apart, there are no spare parts for them. And they're basically saying now that maintaining these turbines in the North and Baltic Sea installations, it's going to wind up costing 100 times more than just buying a new turbine. For which I'm sure the banks will loan them more money. It's just badly managed. They went out and did this and said, oh, it's great, we're doing it for planet Earth, we're fighting global warming, we're going to be green. And like ethanol and fuel and the failed solar power companies, they didn't really think it all the way through. They really didn't do a careful analysis. Maybe they were trying to do the analysis on their PCs and it was running Windows Vista or that first generation Pentium chip that had that hardware error in the divide. It's amazing. Speaking of computers, Microsoft is getting more aggressive in pushing their Windows 10 upgrades. It's now a mandated upgrade. If you don't want Windows 10, you have to shut off the updates on your machines. At which point, of course, you're going to get constant nagging about your updates are not on. You should turn on your update, blah, 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 blah. Basically, Microsoft's attitude is, we're going to shove it down your throats whether you want it or not. This is a fascist country now, and you do what the corporations tell you to do or bad things will happen to you. Microsoft, Uber alles. Same thing they're trying to do with Hillary Clinton. We don't care what you people want. We're going to tell you what is best for our business model. Now, I got an email from somebody who has works for a company with a lot of computers, including a company-issued laptop, which was migrated to Windows 10 by their IT department. And he was writing in to complain that one of the major innovations of Windows 10 is constant nags to buy things. And he says every time he goes into that machine, there's a pop-up from Microsoft to upgrade to to Office 365, which, by the way, you cannot buy it. It is rented month to month to month to month to month. His company already has a license for Office 365, an enterprise license. But it's still nagging him. Now, I mentioned before, and again, I gave Windows 10 a fair trial. I allowed one of our laptops to upgrade to it to see what was really going on. And the user interface is a combination of Windows 7 plus that Windows 8 tile thing, which is nothing but come-ons to buy stuff to stick in the tiles. Anyway, this letter writer came in and said, any corporation blundering forward into Windows 10 is foolish. Now, my experience with Windows 10 was first and foremost, I installed it, started setting it up to support my wife's choral work, and then all of a sudden there was another upgrade, and it said something about, reconfiguring the Windows 10 user experience. And when I logged back in, all of my wife's files had disappeared. Not moved to the recycle bin where you could recover them. They had simply been blanked from the disk. Was gone. That happened. Then I tried to put Skype on there, and because Skype is now part of the Microsoft family, I went in to sign into it, and it hijacked the user interface on the Windows 10 machine and changed my login credentials to match my Microsoft account, which means everybody now has one of the two pieces of information they need to break into your machine. It's a terrible, terrible attitude of them nagging you into a product which, to be very honest, doesn't seem to be very good. If Windows 10 was great, they wouldn't be facing this backlash. But everybody is trying to drive through to the new model of subscription-based software and services where you pay month to month to month so that they don't have to come up with a new product anymore. You're just going to pay a monthly rental to go on using the piece of crud you've got now. That's the new business model. Apparently, Autodesk is having to lay off a huge part of their staff as part of their restructuring as they rush into the cloud and subscription-based services. Good luck on that one. I never was able to get my 3D Studio Max legitimate license to install on Windows 7. And if people can't install your software, they're not going to be paying you that monthly subscription. According to the co-founder of PGP, the biggest threat to your privacy is not the NSA, not the FBI, not the CIA, but the advertising companies. Apple, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft, especially Microsoft. Our corporate government clique has lost all respect for the American people. They're treating us like livestock, like a herd. There's the music. Time for me to get on out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. We will be back tomorrow, Friday, on the Genesis Communication Networks. The Lady Claire will be joining us in hour number 3. So until tomorrow, aloha, America.